All right. Thanks for letting me know. All right. Over to Hot Toys. Over to Hasbro. So Hasbro, they had their earnings report and they hit it again. So to Hasbro. I've talked about their earnings numerous times on the channel. These shorts never get a lot of views. It's fine. But I find it interesting. So there's been a thing happening in the toy community for the last 2 weeks where people kept saying Hasbro's going to stop making action figures. And I could not figure out where that came from. We talked about way back when. It was probably at this point 2 years ago when Hasbro announced that they were going to start licensing out their licenses, or giving out the licenses, selling the licenses. And we saw McFarlane jump in, we saw Super 7 jump in, we saw Playmates jump in, or Mattel jump in. So we saw that start, and everybody suspected that they would just stop selling action figures altogether. I know I said it, they would slow down, and maybe they would even only do premium style figures. That was like a theory I had. Not like it's going to happen, but I was like, oh, what if they only do that? But for some reason, in the last 2 weeks, people really got this story about Hasbro stopping with toys. And I don't know where that comes from, outside of people hear the digital thing and think that means the opposite as well. Digital meaning Hasbro's making a ton of money on Wizards of the Coast, Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, Monopoly Go, names that come up in every earnings call. Every earnings call, those come up. So obviously they're going to keep pushing that. On this earnings call, I listened to it before the stream actually, because that's what I do for fun. They talked about how they're going to keep investing more of their money into things that have a higher margin. So the things I previously mentioned, those are digital, low overhead, invest more into that. Stock market loved that. They mentioned how well some toys have been doing. One of those being Beyblade. Beyblade continues to do well for them. This is probably it's probably been like a year that they've been announcing, or on every earnings call saying Beyblade is a good seller for them. And it has not slowed down as far as the physical assets go. Another physical that goes well for them, Mr. Potato Head. But in something that we pay attention to, Transformers. And they keep referencing Transformers 1. So Transformers 1 continues to get Transformer sales up. In their eyes, to us, I think it's just Transformers in general, but to them, it's due to Transformers 1. They did say they saw a bump in sales on the toy side with Brave New World, specifically around the release of it. So they attributed that to the good performance this past weekend. But they finally said a toy line that is not doing well. If any of you guys want to guess a toy line that's not doing well, feel free to put it in the chat. I'm going to take a drink real quick. Or I should say a license not doing well. And it's something that we've talked about. I cry fake news on it from time to time. But actually, they referenced it more than once on the stream. And that is Star Wars. They said Star Wars has not been doing well toy-wise. Which is interesting considering Skeleton Crew came out and everybody was swearing Skeleton Crew performed well. They mentioned Brave New World, bump in sales. No bump in sales on Star Wars stuff. So a question was asked, how do they figure out what licenses to attempt to sell to other companies, right? In other words, how do they figure out who gets the honor of working on a brand for them or a license for them? they said that it's actually attributed to performance. The other brand that was mentioned was Nerf. They said Nerf's not doing well. And they said what happens is they want to, and I took notes. So I'm going to pull up my notes real quick just to make sure I'm not, speaking out of turn here. Here it was. Yeah. They said that when they're figuring out what license to put on the market for people to bid on, they first figure out, is it something that they want to keep in-house? Which, again, tells me Hasbro wants to keep making toys in-house, which they were also asked that, and they said yes. So they say, all right, is it worth our time and effort, our R&D, to keep this thing in-house? Yes or no? And then the CEO, Chris, said that there's like a kind of like mental category of does something need to be reinvented? Like, is it performing poorly, but people should like it, they're just not at the moment. It needs a refresh. Should it be, like he said, in his words, reinvented? He brought up Nerf. He said Nerf is one of those lines that really needs to be reinvented because shooting, I forget how he phrased it, but like, shooting foam at each other, that style of play with kids right now obviously is not working. So it's been the same since 1970 whatever when it came out. Every time on the call he mentioned Nerf and Star Wars in the same sentence. Not performing well, Nerf and Star Wars. This is performing well. These other things are not performing well. For example, Nerf and Star Wars. He said it multiple times on the call. So I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if Black Series ends up taking a walk to another brand to make. Would not be surprised. He did note that Disney's been soft with their releases when it comes to Star Wars. So it could be something where they're like, all right, we'll hang on to it. And because we have faith that there is more things coming out. He did mention that they are working on new innovative things when it comes to toys. He didn't specifically say Star Wars, but he just noted that. So right now we have Andor season 2. Andor toys don't move like that. And then you have Mandalorian and Grogu at the end of the year. So if I'm a betting man here, they're holding on to this to see what happens as we get closer to Mandalorian and Grogu. If toys continue to suck, 2026, I don't doubt we see Star Wars go to McFarlane or Super 7, somebody else. But Hasbro still owns that license. The only tough part there is the Disney tax. Disney has a heavy tax on all the stuff that they give out because they own that. So now, if you're a McFarlane, if you're a Super 7, if I'm going to make a Luke Skywalker figure, I got to pay Hasbro a tax and I got to pay Disney a tax on top of my operation cost for making this figure. May not make sense and therefore won't happen. But, we'll see. We'll see. It's another earnings call. This is, I don't know, I've been paying attention to this for I've been paying attention to the Hasbro earnings calls and talking about it for probably 3 years now. I've been paying attention for the last 5, I'd say. But we'll say 3 years that I've been talking on the channel about it. 3 years of earnings calls, quarterly calls, quarterly calls. And not once a mention of crowdfunding, HasLabs, anything of the sort. They did say that the toy market is flat, and they foresee for the next 3 years it remains to be flat. The average age of the toy consumer, physical toy consumer, continues to increase. Now it's about 13 plus. So, I think they're starting to understand, and they do understand. We are part of that market, the kidults, they call us. But they're not going to stop. It's stupid for them to stop. And even if it's flat, as long as it's not losing, it ain't going anywhere. It's still easy money for them to a certain extent. So Hasbro not dumping toys. They hit it out the park again. So everybody who's calling for the CEO to be fired, everybody calling for blah, 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 there's your 6 month chart on the screen. I disagree with things. You guys know how I feel about the Maximum series. Completely disagree. But, there it is. Let me check the comments real quick. Yeah. Star Wars. Transformers always sells. That new thing just got fun. Yeah. Transformers fans are wild. Wild. Star Wars Lego is off the charts. It's hundreds to thousands of dollars for a set. Insane. Interesting. Lexi said, then that means this is the third earnings they said Star Wars is doing bad. Oh, they did it 2 other times too? I should keep a running document of like highlights, earnings call after earnings call. No mention of Power Rangers on this one. We know that they are licensing out the Power Ranger license to Mattel. They announced the new series of figures coming out, but they did not talk about it. They did say that them licensing out licenses has been profitable. They saw like a 60% increase in revenue on that. So that works for them. So we'll see how things progress. T3's, oh, by the way, guys, I'm turning on if anybody wants to jump on, if you're a member, go into the community tab. You can hit the link to join the stream. T3 said, if McFarlane Toys took over the license for Marvel or Star Wars, the figures wouldn't be $19.99 or $22.99. They would still be $24.99. Looking at Marvel pose figure statues for $30. Yeah. Small scale ones, and $50 for the big scale. Yeah. I don't think McFarlane taking the Marvel line would decrease costs. You're correct. At $19.99 and $22.99, the fact that he's still putting out that quality of figure, at this point, I'm like, you might as well increase the price if you're going to give out better paint apps, pinless, double jointed, all that stuff. McFarlane stuff at the moment, I was impressed with the Batfleck armored figure, and that's about it. Yeah, Playmates, yeah. Yeah. Now, this does tie into the next thing I want to talk about.